All right, in this show, I want to focus on people or organizations in the community that are making a difference and maybe doing something unique. We'll talk about business and marketing, technology, things that I do for a living, but we're also going to highlight some news stories, particularly things that you can find on drydenwire.com. So today's news story comes out of St. Croix Falls. And it actually, you'll find my picture on the website. We're excited as a city because we, after about 4 years of some legal things going on, we closed on 3 vacant buildings in our downtown. And so we're excited to get through that. There's a press release that's on the website. And so you can check that out. But the buildings have been boarded up and in dilapidation for a number of years and have been a kind of an eyesore affecting our tourism and our business. And so after quite some legal discussions, we came to a settlement with the owners and we as a city purchased those. So we're excited about that. I want to remind you that today is sponsored by Rhett Bozen. He's an authorized AT&T business manager for Wisconsin. And if you're looking to upgrade your cell phone or your internet service, give Rhett a call today and mention the keyword Dryden Wire to take advantage of his show specials. The other headlines that you can check out at drydenwire.com are always there, and many of them are local. Ben does a great job covering our local area, and we appreciate that. So before we talk to my special guest, I want to just take a moment to watch the sponsor video from Rhett.
Are you ready for a new cell phone or cellular service provider? Rhett Bozen's an AT&T authorized retailer and is ready to get you connected. Skip the store and get personalized support at your business or home. Call Rhett today at 715-771-3535.
All right. Thanks, Rhett, for sponsoring our show. Today, my special guest in the studio is Melissa Jones.
Morning.
She's a local business person in town. She is probably one of the most seen signs for real estate, and that's how I got to know her as a realtor. I bought my house. I guess my realtor worked with. Yeah, you were the listing agent.
Yep.
But also it's a small community, so we've connected in other ways too. So I'm excited to have you here. I don't exactly remember when it was that we came together as a city to discuss your project, but it's been a little while in the works. And today we're going to talk about tiny living, and you're kind of the expert on that subject. So I want to just ask you about your experience with the tiny community and what made you want to go into building one.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been a realtor for 23 years, and I have seen, especially over the last few years, affordability erode away. And so we already owned this land in town, and we were trying to think what we could do with it. You know, what we could do with it didn't result in more $400,000 housing, which we already have. It's a great thing to have, but we needed more options. And so, you know, we kind of came up with this idea that, you know, of this, doing this small, tiny home community where it would be more affordable, simpler life, and just kind of be another option for people that they could consider. I mean, with, you know, 63% of households are only 1 or 2 persons. It's a great option for some people. And so, you know, we just started exploring it, and it just kind of evolved into what it is today. And, you know, we approached the city about it just, you know, with this idea, and it was a really good experience.
So before we jump into kind of the city portion of that, the county did a housing study about maybe 2 years ago, and many counties are experiencing this Polk County did a housing study with the Economic Development Corporation and some colleges and the county itself. And what we discovered as a county and as a participating city is that we have a very deficient housing market for the market, that we just don't have enough places for people to buy or rent and live. And certainly that affordable that you're talking about is a big part of that. So from a city standpoint, that was one of the reasons that this intrigued us, was because we know that there is a need for housing. And so let's define for people who may not be junkies on YouTube and watch tiny home community videos all day long. What is a tiny home? You know, like I grew up in a small house. What's the difference between a tiny house and a small house?
Sure. Well, when we're talking about a tiny home on wheels, like you'd see on HGTV, it's defined as under 400 square feet on the main floor. The lofts are bonus, and if you have like a screen porch, that's bonus, but the actual footprint of the living space is under 400 square feet. And it can be wider than the, 8.5 foot wide is travel down the road size, but it can be wider too. It just has to be under that square footage.
So a tiny house under 400 square foot. Now, not all tiny houses are 400. I've seen tiny houses that are less than 200. So some people get really carried away with it and go really tiny.
Yes.
So a 12 by 12 space is 144 square feet. So you're talking about, like, my previous office was 12 by 12, is 144 square feet. So you're talking about a couple of those. Not a lot of space for storage. What do people do with all their stuff?
Yeah, well, you get creative, with the different areas of the house and tucking things under built-ins under stairs, and just, any height you can utilize well. In our community, we're going to have a shed for each person, so, that can be organized well. But a lot of people, it's a minimalist lifestyle, so you don't need 4 potato peelers, I found that in my house this morning, so that's why I said that.
Yeah, well, I have 5 kids, and I joke about moving into a tiny house without them.
Yes.
But in my reality, I am intrigued by the whole movement. It's something that has really taken off probably in the last 10 plus years. HGTV has a TV show, and then a lot of individuals have their own channel where they will tour these tiny houses. And a new phenomenon is to set these up as Airbnbs, and you can go rent those, which is not what you're doing. You're actually looking to do an actual community where people live
year-round.
Year-round. But it has become quite a phenomenon on the internet, and not so much in Wisconsin. I would imagine some of the challenges is the fact that we have minus 20-degree weather sometimes. So well, let's talk a little bit about what your hopes are with this community. If you're from Wisconsin, you might have heard of a manufacturer in Rice Lake. I think it's called Escape Homes. And they build tiny houses. Many people will build their own. And so that's a differentiation we as a city made for approving your application, was that we wanted them to be certified and official. And so we could talk a little bit about that too. So tiny house living, let's maybe look at a couple just slides to see what something like this might look like. Can you talk about what we're looking at here?
Yeah, this is the community, the center of the community. All the tiny houses are along the outside of the road, and in the middle is a shared space. They'll each have a raised bed, and then there's a shared, for lack of a better word, tilled area, and then the greenhouse and the pavilion and stuff where they can have potlucks. There's an outdoor kitchen, so they can do some of their canning in the fall and just have gatherings and stuff too, and fire pit and whatnot.
So part of what tiny homes or communities, you can have a tiny house in your backyard if you get permission from like a municipality. Some people will try and sneak them in behind their house where they're unseen, and maybe just have like a secondary living quarters. But what you're doing is even to a greater extent than a tiny community, you're doing an agri-community.
Yes.
So when we were looking at those slides, you were talking about some interesting things like greenhouses and things like that. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so that's the raised beds with the greenhouse in the background, and it'll have edible landscapes. So that's going to be currants, red and black currants on the one side and honeyberries on the other, because I'm told that the deer won't bother those too much, but there's other things that'll have to be in a fenced area that to protect them from the wildlife. So
I should say, if you have questions for Melissa on tiny houses or how you could get involved in something like that, feel free to ask in the comments, and we'll put those up on the screen. So these are renderings that you showed to the city. You are moving forward with this. This is in process.
Right.
This is in front of your house. These are those boxes.
Yes.
And you sent me a little video.
And that protects, the plants and stuff in there from any of that treated wood, so that they're not, there's no chemicals getting in near what you're eating. So
Sure. What will be in there compared to the garden area?
it'll be up to the person. So that'll be their own individual one to plant with whether they want flowers or vegetables or whatnot. And then, some of those more sprawling things you might want on the ground level, like your cucumbers and tomatoes and different things like that.
So the community, you talked a little bit about having like a communal space,
Yep.
Which is kind of portrayed here. Is this still the concept that you're looking at
Yes.
doing?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
this will be in the middle.
Right. Yep. It'll have the grill and refrigerator built in, kind of on the end there. It'll have 2 burners for, like I said, canning in the fall. You can also use it for maple syruping in the spring too. So yeah, nice little area just to hang out and get to know each other and that sort of thing.
Okay. So if we go to the next one, the greenhouse. So everybody gets to have a piece of the greenhouse and
Yes.
gets to weed and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's mostly going to be for seed starters, but they'll have kind of an assigned space in there, and then if somebody's not using it, they can share it with others. But we did order that. It's 9 by 42, and I am not going to speak to my husband at all that week. He has to put it together because I think it's like 5,000 pieces.
Yeah, it's from IKEA.
It's something like, it's going to be an interesting thing to build, I'm sure.
So when you look at this space, how big of a space are we talking about, and how many homes are you proposed to actually put in there?
It's about 5.5 acres or so where the houses and the community sections sit within it. We've earmarked 31 acres, so they have trails around them and stuff as well. So they do have some more space to explore.
Do you think that people who might be watching this later and they say, I'd love to do a tiny house community in whatever city, is there a minimum footprint that you would say is best practice, or could you do it on a smaller space?
You could, but you really have to have some outdoor things for them to do, because when you live in a small space, the outdoors is an extension of your living area. So you want to make sure that there's some kind of attraction, that people have something to do, and so if you have a smaller space, there needs to be some sort of attraction there.
Okay. So I know you're a hive
Beekeeper.
person.
Yes.
In front of your house you have hives. So part of your concept for this is also to have hives. What are the benefits of having pollinators in your community space?
Yeah, well, it's great for all the fruit trees and different plants and stuff. It's just, it's part of the ecosystem. And then, we'll teach the people in there about beekeeping. My husband doesn't even wear a suit anymore when he goes out there. And, and then, of course, you get the yummy honey in the fall. So,
Sure.
yeah.
I think people don't understand the importance of pollinators and how essential they are for all food.
Yeah.
And if we don't make space for those bees, butterflies, bats, and all sorts of different things, then our food supply is going to continue to be in jeopardy. And people, I don't think they really realize that.
Right.
Rotary is something I've been a member of for quite some time, and a big push for our club has been the pollinators
Sure.
and making little pollinator gardens in our backyards and things like that. So,
Well, and something interesting, Kirk, we used to live in the country, and we've had 2 harvests in town now that we've been in town. We actually get double the honey in town than we
Really?
did in the country. And, you know, you kind of scratch your head and wonder why, but, you know, in the country we're surrounded by cornfields and soybeans. And in town we have different things blooming at different times. So
does that affect the taste of the honey or the honey
maybe
itself?
slightly, yeah, a little slightly. It was still good either way, but it does taste really good in town, I gotta say.
Yeah. Well, I know that you make it a community event and you
Yep.
post it online for people to come and check it out and actually see you
Yes.
spinning the honey and doing all that, and it's pretty neat. So,
Yep.
So this is a picture of what a tiny house would look like. Can you kind of walk us through this? You don't see any wheels, so
Yeah, there's they have to have skirting around them, so some kind of protection for keeping it warm underneath. And then right next to this one is it almost looks like a garage, but it's actually a shed. We have 10 by 12 sheds, and then with single or double doors in case somebody wants a golf cart or something to park in there. But yeah, they'll be all different sizes, and you know, some are more modern looking, and this is more of a traditional style here. And each person brings their own, so they're going to have their own style. We do have architectural approval just to make sure it looks good in there, but it's kind of the sky's the limit when it comes to design on those.
yeah. So that's a 400 square foot space. So the length and width of that has to be able to drive down the road. You can get them a little bigger, and then
Yes.
you have to have special permitting,
Right.
kind of like when you see the oversized loads for traveling. But some people actually will travel with these and move around a little bit. These are really meant to be somewhat stationary and stay in their space.
Yep. They're very heavy, so they are, you know, a bit of effort to pull around. So a lot of people do like to leave them somewhere for a length of time.
Right.
Like you said, if they are wider, you need a special permit, so it's not, you know, it's not cheap to move them once they go beyond that 8.5 foot wide. But it sure is nice having those extra couple of feet. You know, makes a big difference.
Yeah. So this is an aerial view of this concept, and you're coming in to a fairly wooded area. Is
Yep.
it wooded like that now, where you'll have to clear some trees, or are
Yep.
these future trees?
No, it is wooded now, except for that center area that's open. But the woods is on the side, and you know, unfortunately, we will lose a fair amount of trees when they run the water sewer lines in, because they got to go fairly deep with those. But so we will replant some. I think I've got 70 pine trees, 7-footers on order, and we're going to try to rent a spade and save some of the maples and stuff, the smaller ones, of course, but and replant in those areas to give privacy back. But it, you know, it does have a nice wooded backdrop to it, so people are going to feel pretty private in there, which is nice, not out in the open so much.
So what's unique about this, I think, is that you're doing this within a city, not in a township or a village.
Yep.
And so you are creating somewhat of a outdoor space that is going to feel like you're not in a city.
It
And we're
does.
not a big city, but we are a city. So
Yeah.
what is it like around there? Like what's close to
Yes.
this area?
So you're up in kind of the business district, so you've got a lot of the stores, like the grocery store, Marketplace, you've got Walmart, and you've got like Subway and Dairy Queen, all literally walking distance. It's less than a half a mile. And then you've got, between them and us, you've got a development, housing development, residential, and then you know, you get back to our area, and when you're back there, it does feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, but yet you can walk to everything you need. So.
You mentioned golf carts. The city does have a golf cart ordinance that allows for golf carts and ATVs to drive on the city streets.
Yes.
So hypothetically, you could
Yeah.
go cartless if you wanted to,
Sure.
and if maybe not in the winter, but you could drive a golf cart or ATV, UTV to the restaurant or grocery store if you wanted to, which is kind of fun too. So.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of people work from home nowadays, so you know.
Right. Yeah. Will this have amenities like normal sewer and water and internet and things like that?
Yeah, so we are running the city sewer water up. Hopefully about a month from now we'll be starting that. And then there'll be natural gas, electric of course, and the internet line, and it'll all be right at their site for them to tap into.
Okay. And this is a layout, so this kind of gives an overview from the top down. You can see the road coming in, and then it's just going around, and there's little individual driveways. There's some stormwater
Yep.
area, and then all of the community things are kind of in the middle. Anything
Yep.
you want to talk about with that?
Yeah, so the top half of that circle there, that's the garden area, and that's going to be fenced in because we have a lot of deer back there, and that's where the raised beds will be. The blueberry bushes will be in there because otherwise the deer go after those. I want to put an asparagus bed in there, and there'll also be fruit trees within there too on the border. You can see them bordering it just since we're already fencing it anyways. And then above that, next to the left of the pond, there's the orchard. So we're going to have pears, plums, apple, cherry trees in there. And there's a little white dot you can see by the bottom corner of that. That's the chicken coop. And the permaculture guy recommended that we put it right up against there because the door can open automatically, and then the chickens can free range within the orchard, so they'll be fenced in. But they'll eat the bugs, they'll give the good fertilizer, and it'll be kind of this nice little ecosystem going on.
So chickens,
Yes.
we allow chickens in the city.
Yeah.
And of course, chickens have a lot of benefits. The ticks, which I know there's probably some ticks in the woods. Chickens will eat the ticks. They'll eat a lot of bugs and things that are not good. What are some of the other benefits that you've heard from chickens? Because I know that they're...
Well, have you been to the store lately?
There you go. So if you're producing eggs,
Yes.
they're a gold mine.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'll be huge for the community just to have that fresh, food right there. They can just go out and get their eggs in the morning, and we're gonna roll out nest box that we have one at home at our house, and we'll get it for the community too, where the chickens lay the eggs and they roll back out of their way, so they're not getting roosted on, and they're not getting poopy and dirty, and you can just take your eggs, they're perfectly clean,
Right.
put them right on your counter, don't even have to wash them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you don't have to refrigerate them,
Right.
at least for a while.
Yes.
Renee asked, she said, sorry, I may have missed it, but what does the inside of a tiny house look like?
Well, again, there's the sky's the limit there too. It's however the people want to finish it and what builder they go with. Escape Homes does more of a wood feel to it. They had an architect that came from Sala Architects. Other places like the farmhouse look with the shiplap that's white, and some of them have lofts. So for either sleeping or storage, and some have the main floor bedroom. So they're kind of fun to design, really.
Yeah, the ones that I've seen, and a number of years ago, the Restore in St. Croix Falls had a tiny house
Yes, I
kind
remember
of
that.
tour.
Expo. Yeah.
They were building it, and crazily thousands of people came to that. I mean, it was incredibly busy. But the Escape Tiny Home builders in Rice Lake brought a couple of their models out.
Okay.
They tended to be tongue and groove, probably not drywall, because if you're traveling with them, that can move and crack. So a lot of tongue and groove, beautiful wood. Some may choose to be more rustic if they want, like I've got a pallet wood background. But it's totally up to you. You get to design it. It's built to the specifications of a house. And so you can build it with different flavors of wood. Some people want to be more green, so they'll go to the Restore, which is why they did that expo, and they'll put
Reclaimed.
yeah, they'll reclaim windows, and they'll do all that. And as long as they meet the guidelines that are set up by the developer, the people who build them to certify them, they're pretty workable with you.
Right.
I think they prefer to use new, but if you absolutely want a certain type of wood floor, they'll probably throw that in there for you.
Right. There's a builder in Eau Claire called No Boundaries, and they are known for getting reclaimed products from like schools and stuff, the old floors in the gyms, the maple, and using different products in their houses. So.
Yeah, I would say they feel a little cabiny and very anywhere from someone who builds it themselves, it may be a little more rustic, all the way to way better than my house.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, they can get pretty
amazing.
elegant too. Yeah, it depends what direction you want to go with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Renee also asked about property taxes. We could talk a little bit about what the city's request was, and we have a little bit more time to chat. So you came to the city with this concept to say we want to build how many?
16 units.
16 units on a
Yep.
5-acre parcel. And in doing that, for those of you who don't know, I'm the mayor of St. Croix Falls, so I went through this whole process. The first step was to go to the Planning Commission and basically just kind of pitch this idea, which was appealing to us because of that housing study that said we need more houses, we need more affordable housing, and this idea of having 16 units on a
Right.
5-acre parcel with all these amenities was very intriguing. And it's kind of hip and cool,
Yeah.
being the first tiny house community in Wisconsin
Yeah.
was kind of neat. So what was that process like, and was there any like pushback, any
Yeah, so-
issues that came up?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I first did a few just kind of soft taps on, the people on the board, like, would you even consider this? And because, in order to even consider it, zoning had to be changed because in most communities, there's not zoning that allows for, 300-400 square foot houses and also ones that are movable. So you have to kind of redo all that before I can even, formally present for you to approve this community. So, at first we were talking about doing some smaller homes along the road, and then this was going to be kind of a phase 2 in the back. So, in that community, I mentioned there's a residential community that we drive through to get to this, and, in that community there's houses that are probably, 1,400 square feet. And so we were thinking maybe do 800 across the street and then do the small ones in the back. The neighbors weren't real fond of having something different directly across the street, so we decided to just go to Plan B right away, and we'll reserve those houses that are kind of within that community to be the same, and then have our own community that's different in the back where it's not part of theirs. So, so I guess then we found a organization that helps cities that, if they are interested in doing something like this, what it might look like to redo zoning and how you might approach that. And I think they did a webinar just to kind of show you guys what that might look like if you were interested. And
Do you remember the organization that
Yep.
put that on? That was very helpful. by
it
the
was,
way.
yeah, that was THIA, THIA. They're out of California, Tiny Home Industry Association. And that's all they do is they help states and municipalities put different things into practice that would allow for this sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think as a city, we definitely are into providing housing. We're into the concept of affordable housing. We want to do that, but there's something scary about saying, yeah, bring houses on wheels and set up these. In our mind, those things could get out of hand really fast.
Right.
And what about trash? And what about the look and feel? And how are they maintained? Is it going to be just a bunch of campers? Things like
Right.
that. And so what that organization explained is that tiny houses have their own set of rules that they go by and certifications, and that while some people can build their own, to be certified you have to pass certain standards.
Right.
And those standards include quality material. They have to be built to the same standards of housing. And
Certain insulation levels. Yeah.
right, and look and feel. And then we added on there things like skirting to hide the wheels, those planter boxes around the outside, things like that. So 16 houses are going to be on your property. How does the person pay? Like what's the cost, and who pays the taxes and the water bill and all that kind of thing?
Sure. In this case, these are leased spaces, so they buy their own house, they bring their own house, and then they lease the space, and then we're maintaining the property as far as the grass and the snow. They're maintaining the edible landscape, so they're gardens and stuff like that. And then we have all the utilities there for them to hook into, and then they hook into the ones they need, and that's their bill to pay. We do cover the garbage and recycling as well because it's just one unit that they can all use. So,
as far as property taxes, then
Yep.
then you would pay the city for the property taxes,
Yep.
and
so our property taxes will go up because of the infrastructure we're adding, and if they decide they want to add a deck or something like that, they'll have to get the permit, and that will be their cost for however much our taxes go up. We'll bill them separately for that.
so if you're going to build a new house, and probably that 1,500 square foot 2-car garage or whatever,
Yeah.
It used to be that you could build that for 150,000 or something like that. That's long gone.
That's long gone.
And so when we talk about affordable,
Right.
particularly after the increases
Yeah.
last year, affordable is no longer like 30,000 for when people think tiny house.
Right.
Some people think, oh, $30,000. Some of these houses are actually considerably more expensive, but also considerably more nice.
Right.
They're just
Yeah.
really nice, warm and
Right.
comfortable.
Yeah, you can put the same, granite countertops that you put in your own house there. So, I mean, it can add up just like a regular house would if, depending on the finishes you pick and stuff. But generally speaking, I've found them as, a finished product as affordable as 45,000. But I've seen people spend 150 if they want to. But I think most people are probably in that 60 to 90 range on a tiny house.
Which still for, when you talk about like a mortgage or something like that, a $90,000 dollar bill versus $350 or $400,000, which some of the houses in our neighborhood
Right.
were purchased for $150,000 less than they're valued at. Whether or not you could sell them, I guess, is questionable.
Yeah.
So what about like a mortgage? If you have a tiny house, are you able to go to a bank and just say, hey, I'm going to buy a tiny house? And
Yeah,
does that work?
it's a little trickier because they're basically built on an RV frame. So the banks treat them as an RV loan. So most banks are about 10-year amortization. So it does make the payment a little more aggressive, but you're done in 10 years instead of 30. A lot of what we're finding though is people that are interested. A lot of them have owned their own house. They're ready to downsize. They're ready to simplify. The kids are gone, and they just want to kind of just settle down. So they are selling their house, taking that equity that we've seen happen over the last few years, and paying cash for their tiny house and just living debt free.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I'm a Dave Ramsey guy. I went
Yep.
through Dave Ramsey's big financial guru, and proudly we paid off, over $20,000 in consumable debt back in 2007 through when we bought our house. And so we're debt free except for our mortgage, which is still a pretty big bill. And then of course you have ongoing property taxes and things like that. But for people to imagine like what it would be like to not have a car payment, not have a house payment, not have all those things hanging over your head, affordable becomes pretty comfortable.
Right.
Now, not everybody in a day and age where you drive down Highway 8 in St. Croix Falls and you see like 3 or 4 storage unit operations, where everybody stores not just at their house, but also
we have stuffitis as Americans.
yeah. So what are some things that you would encourage people to do if they're thinking about going tiny?
Well, I mean, you just have to start downsizing some of your items. We've accumulated a lot of stuff. I sell houses, so I go. People live there 20 years. I mean, their garages are full. And so things they've never even boxes they haven't opened in 5 years are just sitting there. So the first thing is just
use it at some point.
Yeah, just get rid of the clutter. That's where you start, and just start downsizing and trying to live with a more minimalist lifestyle. See if it works for you.
Yeah, and I think that's a challenge for a lot of people. I know, with 5 kids, my wife and I have a lot of stuff, and it's amazing when we go clean things out for a garage sale, or what we do is a lot of stuff we just bring to Family Pathways or to the Restore, because it's not worth the time and effort that it is to sit for 2 days on a weekend and try and sell it. So, you know, getting rid of that stuff is freeing. It really feels, you know, there's a tiny house movement, but there's also a minimalist movement, and they kind of can go hand in hand. You can be a minimalist without being a tiny house person. But if you're going to be a tiny house person, you're probably going to have to go down that minimalist route. So do you have any resources for minimalism?
You know, they put on a class on it at the Osceola Community Ed thing a couple months ago, so I wonder if that might be a recurring thing, but there are people that do classes on that sort of thing, and even I think you can hire to help you with your things if you are, some people get a little attached and need that extra, you know, person there to help them with that. So,
So Renee said, so it's like a retirement resort. Would you consider this to be a retirement resort?
I wouldn't say a retirement resort. It's, you know, it's a year-round community, so it's not what I'd call a resort, although it, you know, hopefully it feels like one. But there's all different ages in there. We do have a guy that's about 30 that's signed up, and there's a gal that is probably early 40s that has 2 children that's coming. So there's a mix of ages and folks in there, so it's going to be pretty exciting.
I think, you know, when I look at the YouTube, I watched a lot of videos as we were preparing for this from the city level, and webinars and things like that. A lot of the people that are doing this are younger, and they just don't have the same mindset that their parents had. Their parents thought that success was a house with a yard and 2.5 kids and a car and a job. And a lot of the younger kids are kind of saying, you know what, experiences are more important. And so having a place where I can afford to live, but then go out and do skiing or snowboarding or exploring the wild or whatever it may be. And so I think there probably will be some retirees who sell and buy, and there'll probably be some younger folks that just don't want all the junk their parents had or their grandparents had and are looking for something different. So I think that that's kind of unique too. So if somebody, you said that people are signed up, so you're in this process right now, haven't broke ground because you're waiting for the spring, but who is this target market that you're, you know, relating to? Who are the people that are
it's people that are just looking for a more simplified life, basically. They're wanting to downsize it. You know, we struggle to make all these loose ends meet, and let's just have less ends, you know. And so they're also concerned about, they love gardening. They're concerned about health. It's getting to be more and more of an issue. You know, farmers are having to use more and more inputs because of these Roundup resistant weeds, and it's, you know, health is not getting better. So people are really looking for, you know, more natural approaches to things. And so, you know, people that just want to have that there, the food aspect, the community aspect. A lot of people have lived through COVID as single people, and they're longing for that connection again with people that have similar interests to them.
And providing an outdoor space is kind of an interesting way to do that too. Someone asked, Mary asked, how many of the 16 spots are currently spoken for?
Well, it changes, but I believe I have 10 people with actual signed leases. I've got 2 that are in process of signing, and I'm running through apps on a couple others. So it's getting pretty full, but I know that'll change too, because people have issues come up in their lives where things change. So there's always going to be a spot or 2 opening before they get settled in.
Do you know of any other communities? I put in the bio that I think this is the first Wisconsin community. Do you know of any other full-time communities in the Midwest or in Wisconsin per se?
No, there's really not in the Midwest. There's some in the South and there's some on the coast, but we are cutting edge for the Midwest here.
We're kind of neat. It's kind of neat to be at that spot. In places that have high density population zones, they are opening up the zoning for this because it's meeting the needs of two things. One is it's allowing people to rent out their backyards that are unused to people who might have a garage space that they can turn into a tiny house without the wheels. And then if they want to rent that out, that could be an extra income stream for people in a tough economic time. But it also provides housing in places like Los Angeles and in California and places where there's just no place to build.
Right.
Allowing someone to put a temporary structure in is something that is very appealing to the municipality. So we don't have that issue necessarily here, although we don't have the housing. So I think that that's kind of great. Cynthia said how Hayward is looking to develop such a place on Highway 63 South. It was a golf course. So yeah, I think more and more people are looking for these alternative ways to do things, and I think it's kind of a fun idea to do. So you went through the Planning Commission.
Yep.
The Planning Commission heard your case.
Yep.
They picked apart some things and said, well, here's our concerns, and then ultimately they voted to approve sending that to the City Council.
Yes.
You also had a public meeting.
Right.
So we have to have a public meeting where people can come and voice their questions, concerns, things like that. That went relatively smooth.
Yeah,
there
it
were
did.
some people who were concerned about traffic because the entrance will go through their neighborhood. But overall, I think that people were understanding of it. And the City Council,
They were great to work with. Yeah.
they were,
Yeah.
so we are now in that final stage where it's been approved, the zoning's been changed, there's a infrastructure plan.
Yep.
Where are you at now? Like, what's the next steps for you?
Yeah, all the engineering's been turned into the DNR. We're just waiting for them to go through their normal course of practice and sign off. And as soon as that happens, we'll be breaking ground hopefully, mid to late March. So,
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll look forward to that. Where can people find information about tiny homes and your community specific?
Sure. Yeah, our website is tinytimbersagrihood.com. And they can go there. We've got a frequently asked questions page that answers most questions. And they can also find out more, about spaces available and just different aspects of that community. So
Yeah. So if someone like Cynthia was talking about has an interest in learning more about how to do this in their community, and they're thinking, oh, I got to go to the Hayward City Council, and they're not, what resources would you be able to provide or point them to? You mentioned an organization that did a webinar for us.
Thea would probably be the best one I could point them to. A lot of it's just going to be, do they have that relationship with their community? Have they lived there a long time? Do they know them? Is there a trust level between the developer and the city that it's going to go well? Or is this an outside company that nobody knows about that's, who knows how it's going to go?
Right. Well, and I think the more education you can provide and then more examples, a lot of this was already done. And in fact, what was really interesting, I watched a documentary on this, I don't know if it was that particular organization, but I'm sure they're part of it. There are conferences about the rules for tiny houses and things like that that make it very easy to go to a city council or a board and say, here's the structural, things that we do to make sure that these are quality, that they're not going to fall apart, that there's, a plan. And they're already done in many places. So we researched it, we talked to a few people, we looked at our zoning, and ultimately our city decided that this was something worth pursuing and kind of a really fun concept. So we're hoping that it'll be really successful for you. From the mayor standpoint, I'm really excited to be a part of that, and I want to thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was educational for people. We'll throw that up there. I got to get rid of that. Oops. Let's see. The adjoining property owners are fighting this. which is normal concerning the trash, septic, noise, campers versus homeowners, property values dropping for adjacent homeowners. That was also a concern for our community, and there were some roadblocks that we overcame. Some of the things that the city did to guarantee that there would be high quality. We also have it where it's a little further out in the woods, per se. I mean, it's off a road, but it's not in the neighborhood. So there's some things that you can do. We also asked that you provided snow plowing and mowing, and that there wouldn't be debris and cars laying all over.
We have 10 pages of rules and regulations for our people.
Right, yeah. So I would just say, Cynthia, try and work with the city council, and then be willing to make concessions where they can be made. Melissa, I will say, was very willing to make this workable and make it enjoyable for not only the people that are in the community, but also the people that are outside of it. One comment I think was, is it a private middle area, which I don't know if that was like she wanted to get in on the garden, or if she was kind of like, well, it's like some private club. But yeah, you're paying within that area, you're paying for those amenities, and so it's going to be private. But
and I think a lot of the people that are coming, the residents, are excited to do some classes and open it up to the greater community, just within, having different, whether it be food processing, canning, the whole honey harvest thing, having other people out and learn about it.
Yeah, well, I think it's a neat thing. So I want to thank you for doing this in the city, for being cutting edge, and I think we'll have a pin in a map that says first tiny home community, which I'm excited for, and I would imagine that you're going to have a lot of people that are going to want to take a tour, so you might have to figure that out, because I know this is a massive, huge thing in and around not just our area, but all over the country. Right. And so we'll have to invite that guy that does the tours to come and do some tours. So I want to thank our show sponsor, Rhett Bozen, your AT&T retailer. You can skip the store and get personalized attention for your next phone or cellular service upgrade. Remember to mention Dryden Wire to hear about his show specials. On behalf of Dryden Wire, I'm Kirk Anderson, and I'm here with Melissa Jones, and you're watching The Kirk Anderson Show. Have a safe day.